Hello, my name is Dana Littlefield. I'm a journalist working here in San Diego. I'm here to give you a few tips on how to conduct interviews and how to hopefully get the most out of your sources when doing those interviews. So here we go. My first suggestion is that you treat an interview like a conversation. Now, I know that must sound obvious to a lot of people, okay? But think of it this way. You don't want to be there doing your interview with notebook and list of questions in hand, speaking to that person by saying, okay, question number 1, and you look down and you read it, blah, 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 blah. Question number 2, look down, you read it, blah, 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 blah. People aren't likely to really open up to someone who is conducting an interview in that way. Instead, you want to be a bit more free, a little bit more open in terms of your physicality, your body language, and how you pose the questions to the person. Again, treat it like a conversation. So instead of staring at that notebook, have your questions in mind. You might need to glance down from time to time for a bit of a prompt, but make eye contact with that person. Treat it like you're having a real back and forth with a person and not simply reading questions or reciting questions like a robot. Okay? So there's that. So you want to engage with the person that you are interviewing. You want to, where appropriate, react to what that person is saying. Now, I don't mean some grand outburst, all right, that could be very off-putting to the person, nor am I suggesting that you react in a way that tells that person you're interviewing how you want them to respond, all right? That's not at all what I'm talking about. But it is okay for you to maybe lean in a little bit closer if somebody says something that's particularly interesting. You can even say, that's interesting, or I didn't know about that, or, I'm learning something here today. A little of that goes a very long way. You don't want to do too much of that so that you are, stepping on the other person's words or dominating the conversation. And certainly you don't want to do a lot of that if you are doing an interview that is being broadcast, again, because you don't want to insert yourself too much into that interview. But that little bit of reaction can help draw out the person and get them to share more in the interview. Always be genuine when doing that, but it can be helpful. So there's that. I would also suggest that you build when you are conducting these interviews. So start with the easier questions, the ones that kind of, open up the subject matter to the person you're interviewing, and then build to the harder questions. I usually tell people you don't want to start on level 10, you want to start on level 2, okay? And build and build and build. That way, again, you are helping the person you're interviewing get a bit more comfortable with you and with the discussion. You are not hiding anything. They may already know what you're building to, okay? But again, it's not always a good idea to start on level 10. Now, there might be some situations where you only have a few seconds and you only have time to ask that one hard-hitting question. And in that case, I say go for it. That's what you've got to do in that moment. All right? And in some scenarios, it might be helpful for you to actually share a little bit of yourself in the interview by maybe talking about a similar experience of your own, or, something about your professional background or something like that. Be mindful, a little bit of that goes a very long way because the interview is not about you and you don't want to dominate in that way. But it can signal to the person you are interviewing that you are willing to give a little bit of information while taking this information in that they are providing to you. And that can help, once again, put that person a little bit more at ease as you are having that dialogue. Be efficient when doing interviews. So even though I suggested before that you should maybe start with your softer questions and build to the harder ones, you need to be aware of the kind of time that you have, all right? And not waste people's time, not waste the time of the person you are speaking with. So if you know you only have a few minutes, act accordingly. Get through that information as quickly as you can. Again, without coming off as robotic. All right? Also, do your homework. Come prepared. So you don't want to waste a lot of time asking questions about, maybe procedural things, for example. That's the research that you can do on your own, and you can come to that interview with that information in mind. Not only is that helpful to you as the reporter, but it also signals to the person you're talking to that you cared enough to do that background work and to be ready for that conversation. Okay? Also, keep it professional. We ask tough questions. And, I will never pretend that, every time I'm conducting an interview that person absolutely wants to talk to me, a reporter. Certainly not, okay? But even if I do get pushback, if that person is not so willing to open up to me, I try to keep it professional because it's not about me. And it's not about perhaps my hurt feelings because of the way that other person reacted. All right, keep your cool, keep it professional, and keep it going when you come to interviewing that person. All right, be humble, because even though you've done your homework, right, you've done the work and you maybe have demonstrated time and time again that you can do this kind of work, you are coming into this interview prepared to ask the questions. You shouldn't be coming into that interview thinking you have all the answers. If you project that to the person that you are interviewing, why should they be willing to open up to you at all? So that's something to keep in mind. Be humble, be open to what that person has to say. Now, of course, you may still need to challenge that person, challenge his or her or their answers, and that is perfectly appropriate. Okay. But again, you want to make sure that you are projecting to that person that you are listening, that you are willing to listen. And even if you have to say, based on one of their answers, well, that doesn't really match up with what I've seen in my research, that's okay. But you still want to project that you are open to hearing that person's response. All right. Please bear in mind that when you're doing this information, you are not simply seeking facts. You should be asking questions in an effort to really kind of draw out of people what they're feeling about these topics or these experiences that they've had. You'll want to be careful about how you ask those questions. Sometimes simply asking, depending on the circumstances, how does that make you feel? That can really anger people, particularly if they think that it should be obvious to you how they feel in a certain situation. So I have found that maybe the better way to ask that question or ask a similar question is to say something like, can you describe for me what this experience has been like for you? Can you describe your emotions in a particular moment? Asking them to describe how they feel tends to, in my experience, get people to open up a bit more and to be more descriptive rather than, how do you think I feel? That kind of answer. Okay. All right. A few more miscellaneous tips before I wrap this up. Sometimes it can be helpful to do something active with the person you're interviewing. So again, if it is feasible based on the type of interview you're trying to do, maybe taking a walk with that person might get them to loosen up and talk to you a bit more freely. If that's possible, I say give it a try. Or you might be engaged in some other kind of activity. Maybe simply having, coffee together. That can be something that can help put people at ease rather than you sitting in front of another person and you're firing questions back and forth. All right. Just the simple act of having a cup of coffee with someone can kind of bring down those walls a little bit. Okay. And lastly, I would like to say, trust your gut. You are a human being with experiences. You understand things. You've interacted with people all of your life. If something doesn't seem right to you at a core level, you should challenge that. You should listen to that and you should challenge the person. You can tell them, something about this just doesn't seem right, and maybe ask a question again to try to get a better understanding of where they're coming from. All right. So, but if something in your gut is telling you this information is not trustworthy, make sure you check it out. In fact, you should check everything out because that is our job as journalists. With that, I hope that these tips are helpful to you. Good luck with your interviews. Take care.